Hello and welcome back once again to the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast. This is episode 101. John and Wendy talk to Bruce Waller. I'm your host, John.
And I'm Wendy. How you doing tonight, John?
I am great, Wendy. Hard to believe we're now, as Bruce and I were talking about briefly before we got started, it is now the March to 200.
Yes, we are.
We are on the path. And
crazy,
we wanted,
man.
And as I like to say, it's bananas.
Yes.
Hard to believe we are here. We wanted to take just a minute. We certainly talk about sponsors a lot, and we have been so appreciative of everybody that's worked with us to date. This will be coming out right after our last conversation with Centennial Inc. and Mike Sipple. As far as the monthly chat, we are certainly open to love talking to potential sponsors. Yes. We do have someone that will be sponsoring the month of February, so you'll hear about that next week. Yes. But if you are looking to work with someone or some people like us, we are always happy to talk to you, and want to just throw that out there because it's been great to work with folks like Namely and Career Arc, with Skill Scout and Balance Track, Bonusly, and now Centennial. Yep. So we're again incredibly fortunate to consider really what we call our sponsorship family, because these are folks that we love maintaining our relationships with and continuing to talk to and share all the great things they're doing. So we're throwing it out there just as we start this March to 200. If it's something that you're interested in, maybe some of you that haven't worked with podcasts before, we love to be the first interview for people. We'd love to be the first folks that you like to sponsor.
We enjoy working with folks, and we've got, a variety of ways. If you're interested in the Twitter chat, if you're interested in the podcast, and if you have some wild and crazy idea that we've never thought of, we'd be happy to chat. We're not going to guarantee anything, but how did Kramer put it? Interesting trades are considered.
I think that sounds good. Yeah. Hey, you could be the official business card sponsor if you really want to work with us. For those of you who haven't heard the story, I got a LinkedIn invite from somebody that thought we were a company, and he said, I really want to do business with you. When I offered to work with him to maybe be the official podcast sponsor, he simply replied, no, thank you. What happened to want to work with us, dude? Come on, man.
And business cards are the wave of the future.
It's not a bad thing to have. And I thought it was a legit opportunity for us to partner with somebody in a different way. And apparently he didn't appreciate the fact that I wasn't buying anything. So his loss, not ours.
Exactly.
We've talked enough about that those opportunities. I am really excited about tonight's guest. Been following him for a while out there on the social media scene, and really glad that we were able to have him take part tonight. I know you had a chance to talk to Bruce briefly before we joined or got together tonight. So I'm going to let you make the introduction and we will get started.
Yes. Super excited to welcome Bruce Waller to the show tonight. He is the Vice President of Corporate Relocation for Armstrong Relocation and Companies in Dallas, Texas. He graduated from the University of Central Oklahoma with a degree in business management before relocating his family to Dallas, Texas to start a career relocating families. He once hired and managed talent for his company, and today he helps companies relocate talent across the U.S. and overseas. He is certified in both HR and relocation and currently serves on the Texas SHRM State Council as a district director. In 2017, Bruce published a book to inspire people to find your lane and followed it up in 2019 by publishing a journal called Mile Markers, a 5-year journey. He also writes a weekly blog called A Relocation Minute. Something you might not know about Bruce, he has bowled 10 perfect 300 games over his career. He loves peanut butter and Diet Coke, which is probably why you get along so well with Jennifer McClure.
For sure.
Bruce, yes. Welcome to the show tonight. We are super excited to have you. What's in your glass?
Well, first of all, it's an absolute honor to be here on the Social Hour podcast. And in my glass, of course, is Diet Coke tonight. It's a very good choice.
I wouldn't expect anything less.
Bruce, there's this running issue that you and Jennifer McClure and, Mary Faulkner and Lorena Pabon are all Diet Coke people. I used to be a Coke Zero person. I'm not anymore, but there was this real bone of contention that, there's this factions within the Coca-Cola community. But it's cool. We will certainly accept that here. And we're really glad you're with us. How in the world did you get into the space you're in? Obviously working in corporate relocation, tying that into HR. How did all that happen for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible journey. And really, it started back years ago when I was helping manage my parents' bowling centers. Of course, my parents were bowling proprietors, so I grew up in the bowling industry. During that time when I was managing the bowling centers, I didn't realize I was doing HR at that time. When I'm hiring, training, motivating staff and doing the HR duties. But back in 1995, after I graduated from college, I realized that my schedule and my wife's schedule just weren't in alignment. You see, people don't bowl from 8 to 5 during the week. They bowl on nights. They bowl at nights and weekends. And my wife was a school teacher. And so, of course, she worked in the day. So, of course, she worked in the day. I worked at night and on the weekends. And so we were trying to raise a family, and it just wasn't working out the way we wanted it to. So in 1995, I moved to Dallas, Texas, and got a job with a moving and storage company. And I was with this company for about 7 years and just working my way up through the ranks. I was a staffing manager. I was in charge of hiring our crews, training our crews. And then after that, I was hired by another company, about a $5 million revenue company, moving and storage company. And I was the general manager for that company. And of course, general manager, you're in charge of all facets. And my main functions, of course, were operations, sales, and HR. And what I learned from that company is that, it was a branch of a corporate entity with 7 operating companies. What I learned was that branch is that I really was working 24/7. Whenever the corporate called or someone called, they wanted to talk to the general manager, and it was just really a challenging time. And so I decided that I was going to pivot, and I pivoted over to a company called Armstrong Relocation. And in this particular role, it was a little bit different. It wasn't a staffing, it wasn't a manager position. It was going into the marketing and sales piece of it. And I really looked at that I was very intrigued by that because that was one piece I really didn't have on my resume, and I thought I wanted to try it. And so when I joined Armstrong Relocation in 2004, I remember thinking, I don't want to be a sales guy. I want to be someone who can really help people. I mean, I already knew the business. I already knew the operations side. I just started looking for different groups that I could get out and network with. And I'll tell you, and you've probably done the same. You've networked with many groups, and they all have a different way of doing things. But for me, I started networking with Dallas HR. And that's really where it started for me, is just really stepping out and just showing up. And so I started networking with Dallas HR. Funny story, just real quick, and that is when I started working at networking at Dallas HR, the very first meeting I went to, of course, Dallas HR is the 3rd largest SHRM chapter in the country with 2,300 members. So when you go to a luncheon there, you're going to go to a luncheon with 200 plus people. And I remember going to that meeting thinking, wow, it looked like everybody knew everyone. And I was just trying to figure out, I was trying to find my lane. I was just trying to figure out where I fit in. And so, of course, I met a few people and I left. I knew there was something there because HR was a buyer of relocation services. And I thought, if I could learn more about HR and learn more about, what they're doing in their world, then I think I can add more value. The next month I went to the meeting, and I remember walking in, and I shared this in my book. I walk in and I look at the crowd and I walk right back out to my car thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. And if you fast forward 8 years, became president of the organization and then served on the board of trustees for another 7 years.
That is awesome, Bruce. And I'm glad that you walked back in and and stuck around. It's been fantastic for all of us.
Well, and the thing about it is, here's what I learned. And I tell people this all the time. The reason why it was like that when I first started was because I was more worried about me. And when I started leaning in and really learning more about the other person, as I say, be interested versus interesting. When I started being interested, really everything changed. And then Of course, you know how that works. Someone says, hey, you want to be on a committee? Absolutely. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I was on the government affairs committee, and it's kind of, and then of course, you start meeting people, and it's been an incredible, incredible journey. And I've just developed so many incredible relationships, and I just absolutely love it.
In your bio, we talked about your books, Mile Markers and Find Your Lane. So what prompted you to write them? What's been the response? And then any future books in mind?
The response has been incredible. Although I'll tell you, when I decided to write a book, it certainly wasn't to, honestly, it wasn't to be a best-selling book author or to write it for business. I just wanted to write a book. And I remember talking with you offline, Wendy, a few weeks ago. You know, when I'm a big goal setter. And I remember I read something about someone who had tried to set a long-term goal. And instead of setting a long-term goal of what you want, kind of set it of who you want to be. And so when I was 40 years old, after I'd been at Armstrong for about 3 years, I wrote down what I wanted to look like at 10 years from now. And I want to be a sales leader. I want to be on the President's Club. I want to be involved in, volunteering. I want, have a couple of college graduates. I want to write a book. And I wrote down all these different things. And I remember after 10 years, I remember looking at that list just wow, I cannot believe that I've been able to accomplish all of this stuff except this one thing. This book that really pulled at me. And I had been writing a blog at that time. I'd been writing a blog for about 7 years. And I thought, I wonder if I have enough content on my blog to maybe put together a book. And that's really what inspired that. And I'll tell you, the reason why I put it on my list in the first place was because when I started as a manager, when I first moved to Dallas and started as manager, I really struggled. I had a hard time. I tried to do things by myself. I really struggled with collaboration. I struggled with buy-in. I just struggled with all the things you need in your life to be a good leader. I had someone hand me a book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. And then, of course, he also handed me an audio tape to listen to. And I really felt like I had a coach right there with me. And so that kind of started that personal development journey. And so every time I read now, I'm just so inspired. And I'm like, wow, wouldn't that be cool to be able to write a book and encourage someone along the way? And that's really what my hope was at the end of the day was if I've had some failures and I've had some challenges and some successes, maybe there's some other people out there that are in that lane too. And if I could just give them some encouragement and help them, that really, for me, that would put me really in what I call the lane of fulfillment. And that was really my why behind that.
Beyond the books, Bruce, you also do a bit of speaking. And I think it was interesting a little bit earlier this year, I guess into late last year in December, you had an episode of Impact Makers with Jennifer McClure that came out. We are certainly unabashed fans of Jennifer's as well. And I'm so happy that she is back doing the podcast thing, weekly. Your conversation with her was about speaking, and she gave you a lot of insights there. We thought that was really interesting, knowing that you've been very active on the speaking circuit for some time. How exactly did you get your start in that speaking world, and what led to that conversation with Jennifer? And ultimately, where can the listeners that hear this show, where may they hear you in 2020?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That was a lot of fun. Speaking and just having some dialogue with Jennifer. I'm a big fan of Impact Makers podcast too. And of course, Jennifer McClure, she's as genuine as they come. But for me, it really started when I first started at Armstrong Relocation. I knew I was going to be presenting to different companies. I knew I needed to level up my speaking and my communication. So I actually enrolled in Toastmasters for a couple of years to try to really just get better as a speaker. I thought I would be speaking a little bit more early on, but nobody really wanted to hear about relocation unless they were in relocation. Funny thing is, when you write a book, everybody thinks all of a sudden that you are this world-class speaker. And so when my book came out, I started getting a lot of invites to come speak. And I know what the background was. It's because I had built up my network for so long, and now all of a sudden I have a book out, and people wanted to hear that. And I was just so grateful for that. But that's kind of what started that speaking tour. I actually have a good friend here, Yvonne Freeman, that's a senior leader for HR leader for a company here, and I was having coffee with her when a very first company asked me to come speak. And she said, Bruce, you say yes and just keep saying yes, and you're going to grow and you're going to get better from that. And I tell her all the time, I thank her all the time for just giving me that advice along the way. But the reason why the conversation happened with Jennifer was because I really feel like it doesn't really matter what season you're in your speaking. I've been speaking now. I spoke 30 times last year, 20 times a year, so 50 times in the last couple of years. Different conferences. I actually spoke this morning to a company here in Dallas. And it was absolutely fantastic. I always feel like I want to learn something from the people who are out there that are doing it, that are advanced, that are skilled. I think a lot of Jennifer, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to reach out and just see if she can. I was really looking for a nugget. We're all looking for that one little piece that we can just, elevate. And so before I talked to her, I'm a big note taker. So I sent her 5 questions. I said, hey, listen, I know you don't have a lot of time, so I'd like to ask you these 5 questions just to get your thoughts on it. And really what I was looking for in that nugget was, are there some other topics that I can kind of look at? Are there some other places that I should be speaking and different things like that? And so when she looked at those questions, and we got on the phone, she said, hey, do you mind if I record this? Because those 5 questions are the 5 questions that are most popular questions I get asked. And I'd love to record that. And so I didn't realize that was going to be a podcast until she wanted to record that. And I've listened to it half a dozen times just to continue to try to take,
sure.
just to continue to try to take something from it. And so I certainly appreciate all the advice that she gives, but in particular for speaking. So you asked me where I'm going. I was actually speaking at a company this morning. I'm going to be in Brownwood, Texas, speaking at a local SHRM group there this week. I'm going to be in Waco, Texas in 2 weeks. I'm going to be at Oklahoma HR speaking for my, I think, 5th year in a row there. And so in Tulsa, and I'm just super excited. And I got to tell you, I posted something this morning on my Instagram, and I got to tell you, the journey just keeps getting better in the speaking arena. I'm having a great time. And I think it's because of 2 things. Number one, the fuel that you get from the feedback. You know this, John and Wendy, both of you are great speakers. When people tell you their takeaways and how you've been able to lift them up. I mean, that's an incredible feeling. And then number 2, just continue to expand on the network. I just think it's super. So I want to try to keep it going.
I'm curious, Bruce. I know when you spoke with her, you were talking about topics and what the audience may be looking for. What are you trying to do? So the sessions that you have with Oklahoma and what have you, what are you going to be talking about primarily this year?
Well, there's a couple different things. Number one, I think that what I typically talk about is leadership. Find your lane and accelerate your career, and that's really about finding your way. Right. And there's some strategies I give in my book using a career GPS, and that stands for being growth oriented, being purposeful in your planning, and being shareholder resources. So that's really a general session on the importance of just investing in yourself, networking, planning with purpose. But I want to start talking a little bit more about the importance of mentoring. I think mentoring is something that people are doing, but are they being intentional about it? Can we be more intentional about it? I want to talk about that. And then lastly, one of the things that she had also mentioned was, I'm a sales leader in our organization. And so I know a lot of times HR professionals have a hard time getting buy-in from their leaders. So maybe finding a way to share some strategies around maybe what you do in your own company, going to your own sales team and saying, hey, how do you find the champions in the organization? How do you ask the right questions? How do you just continue to find a way to get approval, to feel better about, what you're doing? So, another thing that Jennifer had actually, the main takeaway I got from that was this, John, and this kind of parlays into that question. That is, she mentioned that one of the things you might consider doing is start keeping a question log. So when people ask you questions, write those questions down. And if you have 3 of the same questions, you're probably going to need to turn that into a topic. So that's where I'm going with that.
With all your speaking, you're also very active in Sherman, Texas, which is fantastic. What do you enjoy about being involved at the state level?
Let me tell you, when I was president of Dallas HR, of course, I was a member of the state council as the president, but then I rolled off after that year. And so in 2019, I was appointed district director. And I got to tell you, I am loving it. And here's why. Because we're a mission-driven council, right? And so our mission is to support and connect our Sherman chapter leaders by elevating HR through advocacy, education, and leadership development. I feel like when I talked about mentoring before, I feel like this is a chance for me to mentor upcoming current chapter leaders. I mean, I've been in that position. I remember what that felt like. And, it's one of those things where it's not really fear, but there's some fear of the unknown. Hey, what do I need to do here? I only have a short time to make impact. And so I'm able to really go out there, develop relationships. Every month I have what I call a Texas Sherm Talk. And so we get all the district leaders on the call, and we just brainstorm, to be honest with you. We talk about, hey, what's working for you and what's coming up, and, trying to get ideas to try to continue to elevate the profession and the chapter leadership.
Bruce, it is now time for everyone's favorite part of our show, the half-hour question connection. Woohoo!
Yes.
So very excited we have a few new questions this go round. And first one, what career did you dream of having when you were a child?
Oh man, when I was a child. Well, I do remember this. I had a great high school football coach. He was so inspiring. So when I first went to college, I wanted to be a football coach. I think a football coach, I did my I didn't do student teaching, but I did student observation. And after that, I decided maybe not. Maybe not. But you know what?
So unlike me, who got through student teaching and did it for a little bit, right?
I get to coach Sherman chapter leaders today, so I'm still going to do that. But yeah, coaching.
There you go. Bruce, who's one person you've gained in your network in the last year that you think more people should know?
I'm going to just tell you a real quick story. A guy by the name of Kelvin Goss. Kelvin Goss is an HR leader at Delic US here in Dallas. And the reason I want to bring him up is because last year I was at the HR Southwest Conference. That's the Texas State Conference for, of course, the state of Texas. And he was speaking about networking on the pop-up stage. And so that's where you give the 10-minute presentations, similar to a Disrupt style. And I remember him coming off, and I thought he did a wonderful job. He had some energy in him. He was just a good guy. And so we connected. What I like about what he did, though, was he took it to the next step. See, many times we'll connect and then we'll move on. But what he did was he connected with me on LinkedIn, and then he reached out and said, hey, listen, I'd like to get to know you a little bit more. We're both in Dallas. I'd love to get on a call. So we got on a call maybe a month later or so. Fast forward to this week when he called me and said, hey, listen, my executives are having a team meeting. We'd like to bring you in as a speaker. And so we spoke this weekend, and I feel like we're like friends. And it's because he has done networking the right way. He has basically connected. He has followed up, and then he's continued to try to stay in touch and just we're trying to help each other be resources. He's really excited. I actually shared with him a Disrupt HR Dallas events coming up soon, and so he wants to speak at that. So anyway, I would say that would be someone that people should connect with.
That's always fun when you make the intentional connection like that.
Yes.
That's awesome. So Bruce, a new HR professional asks you for one piece of advice. What do you tell them?
Oh man, one piece of advice. You know what? I would say build a network. I was at a Dallas HR social event when I very first started. I remember meeting a guy there, and he used to be a VP of HR for this company. And I asked him how long he had been involved. And he said he had just got involved. And I asked him why. And he said he had been working with that company for 20 years and he had never gotten out of the office. He didn't have a network and he felt like he was starting over. And I thought, wow, number one, yes, you got to get out and build that. But it's more than the network. I mean, it's the relationships. It's being able to have those resources, not only for you, but to be able to help other people with those. And so I share that all the time. And your network is your net worth. I mean, you think about that. That is so true. And so I'd say build a network.
Bruce, beyond your work with Texas Sherm House, do you enjoy giving back to the HR community?
So for me, it's really been, I think, through, I've been writing a blog with, a Relocation Minute. I've been doing that for a little over 10 years now. And I really enjoy doing that, again, for encouragement. Of course, with Texas Sherm, being able to mentor. And then also, there's one other piece here. We talked about mentorship as well, and that is Dallas HR has a mentorship program for college students. What they do is they allow college students to apply to come into this mentorship program, and then HR professionals can also apply, and then we match up mentors with the mentees. And so I've been doing that for a couple of years, and I got to tell you, I've been told, of course, the mentees are like, oh, thank you so much for what you do. And I'm like, listen, I learned just as much from you or more. The last mentor that here in Dallas, her name is Morgan. And since I'm not an HR practitioner sitting in that seat, I thought, you know what, I still want to give her something really good. So what I did was I contacted a couple of different people in my HR network, said, hey, we're going to come by your office. Would you sit down with Morgan for about 30 minutes, just kind of share what you do, answer questions? And we called it HR Around Town. And that was one of the funnest days I had actually in 2019. So just continue to be a mentor for others.
What a great idea. I think that's fantastic. Yeah. Get some people together and have a nice little round table. Yeah,
Wendy, I'll tell you just real quick. I posted that on social media. And I had 3 or 4 senior level HR leaders in my network that were pinging me saying, hey, how come you didn't come see me? I said, well, you're next.
That's awesome. Bruce, what is your favorite movie?
Oh, favorite movie. That's, those are all tough. Any sports movie, I'd say, any inspirational, Remember the Titans, Jerry Maguire, any sports movie.
How about your favorite musician or band?
Of course, I grew up 80s guy, so Journey, Foreigner, all those fun groups. But actually, I had a friend of mine turn me on to Imagine Dragons. Whenever they saw my a post about Level Up, and so she sent me a song called Rise Up, and I was like, oh, man, I like this group. So I've kind of been listening to some of their music.
Favorite TV show?
Well, I don't really watch a whole lot of TV. However, my daughter turned me on to This Is Us a while back. And so This Is Us is definitely one of my favorites. And actually the new season starts I think today or next week. But anyway, It starts back up soon. So anyway, yeah.
Bruce, I don't mean to chuckle out loud like that, but that show gets more love on this podcast than any other show ever.
Yeah,
it's amazing. I'll bet you're the 6th or 7th person that's mentioned this. It's amazing.
So, the weird thing, John, is it's this show, This Is Us, and then like the Dateline shows.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes.
So
Yeah, those two. You're right.
Those are the two that get the most love. And for me, I'm just like, I watch TV to be entertained and not scared out of my or crying. I don't need to do that while I'm watching TV.
Well, it's amazing, and I have to tell you, you mentioned Foreigner. So my 16-year-old, when he was very, very young, I'm talking like 6 or 7, he was a huge Foreigner fan. He still is a Foreigner fan of anything pre I Want to Know What Love Is. Oh. He hates ballad Foreigner, but Foreigner 4 and anything before that, Hot Blooded, all that stuff, any of the Foreigner greatest hits stuff pre 1984. Absolutely loves it. And one time when he was taking drum lessons, his teacher said, I played a show with Foreigner and half of it was tracks. They had all kinds of audio support, and his face just fell. He was devastated when he was told that they were not playing. Their live show was not really necessarily live. And I forget, there was another band that was with them, and Daniel said, well, what about them? And he said, oh no, man, they played everything. They were legit. Like they did it all themselves. But that was, it's really, really funny. Even, if he hears I Want to Know What Love Is, he just starts to gag, and that makes me happy. I try to teach him well. Now, if you're, believe it or not, folks, he has just made his first comment on this podcast where he said they're terrible. There you go. So if you're, for those of you listening, so my children have been on Star Joe's. They've never appeared on HR Social Hour. Here they are. If you're not watching Remember the Titans or Jerry Maguire, if you're not listening to Journey, Foreigner, Imagine Dragons, or watching This Is Us, Bruce, what else do you like to do outside of work?
Outside of work, well, my daughter has a 2.5-year-old son and a 7-month-old daughter. So we spend a lot of time with our grandchildren, which is a lot of fun. And then, I'm always looking for different things to learn and do. And so about 1.5 years ago, I started taking piano lessons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm playing the piano. Funny story. My brother, who's also in the industry, he heard I was taking piano lessons, so he started taking them too. And so this year at Christmas, it's real. And of course, he bought him a baby grand piano, and I mean he's into it. Wow. And this December, he texted me and he said, "Hey, let's have our first annual piano Christmas." And so we invited, his daughter and daughter-in-law also play. My wife plays. And my daughter-in-law plays as well. So we invited everybody over for a piano night. It was pretty neat. Really enjoyed that.
Nice. That's phenomenal. That is phenomenal. Listen, as someone that taught many instruments, and piano was always my worst, to be starting further along is incredibly challenging. So kudos to you for doing that, because that takes a lot of dedication, and it takes a lot of dedication regardless, but especially as starting when you're not young or a child, right? And you get that repetition. That's fantastic. I love hearing that.
I'm going to ditto that. I'm going to ditto that part when you say it's challenging, because it is very tough.
My dad's been playing piano for 75 years. And so it's, he started literally as a child, and so and he still does. And it's great that, he had that. I grew up with music in my house, and somebody always banging on the piano and singing. And so,
it's awesome.
Bruce, that's awesome. I think it's great that you're finding that when you did. That's amazing.
Definitely. Finally, it's Bruce Waller Day all around the world. What are we doing?
Oh my gosh. What are we doing? First of all, Bruce Waller Day. Wow. How cool would that be? Are you serious? What are we doing? Man, we are probably, we're networking. We're, we're playing the piano. Just having a good time, just really doing fellowship together, and just trying to figure out, how can we keep, building relationships with one another.
What are we eating?
Oh, what are we eating? What are we
important.
eating? Oh, man. We are going to eat some, I know this is bad. Chocolate pudding pie.
Oh,
how's that bad, Bruce?
Yeah, what's bad about that? I'm enjoying that.
All right. With some graham cracker crust. Oh yeah, for sure. Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
Good choice.
I, for one, would be happy to celebrate Bruce Waller Day, listening to piano music and eating chocolate pudding pie for sure.
Heck yeah.
Sounds like a plan to me.
I love it.
Bruce, we are so appreciative of your time and what you're doing for the community and taking time with us tonight. There may be some listeners that don't know you, aren't connected right now. What's the best way for them to reach you out there?
No, I appreciate that, John. And when this has been a fun night. Really, the best way is just my website. Go to brucewaller.com. You can find all my social media. I'm very active on Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram. So I would love to connect. And, we talked about networking, the importance of internal networking, external, but that's social networking. A lot of people don't realize the value of that. So I'd love to connect with you and just continue the conversation.
We will have that in the show notes. And Wendy, how about you? What's the best way for the listeners to reach you out there?
Best way is on my blog, mydailyjourney.com, daily, D as in dog, AILEY. And of course, the second and fourth Sundays of each month, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, you will find me on Twitter as part of the HR Social Hour Twitter chats. How about you, John?
HR Social Hour Podcast.podbean.com. 3 little lines up in the left-hand corner of the screen, or as I've been told, apparently it's a hamburger.
Yep,
You click on that, you open it up, it's access to all my social accounts there. Listen, rate, download, review. If you are an international listener, please contact us. We want to send you a gift for being part of the community, and we'll continue to say that throughout the year. Again, Bruce, really appreciate you being with us tonight. And so for the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast, I'm John.
And I'm Wendy. And as always, be sure to connect,
give back, and network. Take care, everybody.
We'll see you all soon.